Welcome back to the Jacob Pearman Show. I'm Jacob Pearman. We talk football and the NFL all throughout this show. But today I want to first mention about what's coming up this week. This week Veterans Day happens, so we'd like to honor those who have served now and past. So we'd like to mention them. Now let's get into what happened over the weekend in college football and NFL. College football had some crazy events happen over the weekend. The noon games were a little crazy, especially if you watch IU Penn State. IU won 27-24. James Madison beat Marshall. Never thought I'd mention James Madison ever, but they with their win over Marshall, they moved into the top 25, which they haven't been up there since I believe Signetti was the head coach of James Madison. So very good for James Madison. Temple beat Army. No, Army beat Temple. They won 14-13 by a point. Very interesting that they won that game. Aim for Army because they've not played, I would say, their best football this year. BYU Texas Tech. Texas Tech beats BYU. BYU had been a very predominant team this year. It's their first loss to Texas Tech. It kind of shakes things up a little bit, though, if you're a Big 12 fan, because it makes the Big 12 championship harder to watch. Harder to figure out who's going to be in it this year, because it looked like it was going to be BYU, maybe Texas Tech, but now looking more like Texas Tech and probably another team will be in it with BYU's loss. Another interesting game that happened was UAB and Rice. Rice won 24-17. So yeah, IU Penn State, I watched that game. Love IU. That final catch, though, by Omar Cooper Jr. should 100% be in the representation of Catch of the Year. IU didn't play, I would say, their best on offense until the end. They really wanted to get the ground game running. It never really materialized, but Fernando Mendoza pretty much, I would say, in that game built himself a statementhood that he could be the Heisman with that win. He played phenomenal football. He played really good. The game-winning drive will probably be talked about for a while if you're an IU fan versus if you're a Penn State fan, because they went down the field. The drive officially started with a sack, and he went from a sack to a touchdown, which I've never seen that happen before in a game, especially college football. Normally a sack, you go 3 and out right away, or fourth down, throw an interception or something, and you lose the game. He took a sack, and then every play after that was first down, first down, first down, first down, kept the ball moving, kept the ball driving, got down to the goal, got down to third and goal. That ball he got hit. That ball went up the air towards the back of the end zone. Omar Cooper somehow levitating his right foot, got the left foot down, inbounds with barely any grass there to get, a touchdown. Was very fun to watch. I never thought something like that would ever happen in a game like that. First, for it to come down to win it. I've never seen a catch like that to win a game in my life, really, especially college football. NFL, you see some of those crazy catches back in the end zone, but in college, that catch alone will be talked about for a while. Now let's get into the afternoon games, which were a little interesting to talk about the most. Iowa State and TCU. Iowa State won at 20-17. TCU, that game was pretty much 6-0 at one point with Iowa State leading it. And then TCU kind of scored and they were up. And then Iowa State kind of just scored twice and won the game pretty much. Which it was, I think at one point it was 10-6. And then it was 17-13. And then 20-17 to finish the game. But it's very interesting that happened. Now, this game was very interesting that I saw happen was UConn beat Duke, the football team. Now, you would say, oh, if that was basketball, that's common, but UConn has never had a good football team, really, for a long time. And to beat Duke 37-34, I would have thought Duke would have won that game. I thought they would have destroyed UConn. They lost to UConn. That only happens in basketball. If it happens in basketball, it never happens in football. So that game was very interesting to see happen. Auburn and Vandy. I never thought that game would go to overtime. It went to overtime. Vanderbilt won 45-38. That shouldn't have happened. Vandy should have beat the crap out of Auburn, even after Hugh Freeze getting fired last week. It was very interesting that happened. Not really, because I think a lot of people knew it was going to happen. So, I mean, it was interesting if you thought he should have been fired 3 weeks ago, which he should have. It took him long enough to get fired to get that job now. Now that job's available for most coaches, so gonna be very interesting to see what goes on there for Auburn and who they choose to be their next head coach. Oregon, Iowa. Oregon won that game 18-16. I'm a little shocked on how Oregon won that game. That felt like a game like Oregon should have beat Iowa by a lot, but Iowa is that team though. They're always known for their defense. Their defense is always really good. Offense, on the other hand, not so good. But honestly, though, the game should have been 18-18 going to overtime. It was just interesting turn of events. Iowa scored with probably around, it was close around a minute. They scored, made it 16-15. They went for two because if Oregon took the ball down the field, all they had to do was kick three and pretty much win the game. And if they didn't get the 2-point conversion, it was close to being a 2-point conversion. He just slid out of bounds for Iowa. The receiver did, and that cost them 2 points. So it was very interesting how that game went down. Honestly, Oregon should have won it. They played in very much a wet ball game that rained all game. I never thought it would stop raining during that game. Washington, Wisconsin. Very interesting upset between Wisconsin and Washington. Wisconsin hadn't had a completed pass until I want to say was the third quarter, maybe something like that. It took them forever to get a completed pass. Like, they didn't have a complete pass the first 2 quarters. Like, nothing. And I don't even think combined they had 100. They might have had 100 passing yards combined between the 3 players that threw the ball. The punter had the most yards, if I remember correctly. He had the most passing yards out of all the quarterbacks who threw the ball, which you don't normally see that happen. So that was kind of a crazy turn of events during the late afternoon games. Probably won't ever see anything like that happen again. The night games were very interesting. Wake Forest beating Virginia 16-9 at home. Virginia was at home. They were a top team to win the ACC, and now they might not make the ACC championship. Same with Louisville. Louisville lost to Cal at home in overtime, 29-26. Both of those teams losing puts the ACC in a little bit of trouble of who's going to win the championship, and if they team wins, do they make the college football playoffs? Because there's a lot of crazy things that come down the line, because that was week 11 for college football. We're going into week 12, and it's going to be very hard for teams to win now in the last few weeks, because you go into week 15, which will be the championship games, and if you don't win between now and then, before week 14, you're going to have trouble winning that championship the final week in week 15. So it's going to be interesting to see how the ACC shakes up. Right now, the possibilities of the team to win the ACC championship is Georgia Tech, if Georgia Tech finishes winning the rest of the year. Miami's kind of out of the ACC championship with their 2 losses, so there were some interesting things to see who's going to win it and who will be in it for the ACC championship. Another game that was really good, LSU, Bama. Bama won 20-9. LSU, after a couple weeks ago, firing Brian Kelly, their interim head coach was coaching this week, and kind of was interesting to see what happened. Garrett Nussmeier was benched halfway during the game. They put in Van Buren out there. Didn't look good for him. Didn't look good for both quarterbacks. It was a hard day to win, and it's hard to win there in Tuscaloosa, and did not look good for LSU at all. There could be a potential there where Nussmeier transfers out of LSU. If he decides to not go to the draft, he could transfer out and go somewhere else, which is looking like that. Then Navy and Notre Dame played. Notre Dame won 49-10. The crazy part during that game was everyone thought, Navy could beat Notre Dame. They were 7-1, but they didn't have their starting quarterback. Their backup was in. And Navy predominantly is a triple option team where they run it most of the time. You just got to figure out, is the quarterback running? Is it the fullback? Or is it the running back? And or even, are they running a jet sweep or end around? Something like that. Like, they run the ball. And when they throw it, teams know they're going to throw it. And typically when they throw it, there's a chance that the ball is going to be incomplete and not complete pass unless it's short pass. They don't push the ball down the field throwing. They prefer to run. Exact same thing with like Army. Army, you will see they will have more rushing yards than passing yards. That's what typically happens there. One of the crazy plays during that game for Notre Dame was Jeremiah Love looking like he got tackled. It was sitting on the player, spun off him, and took it for a touchdown. You will rarely see something like that happen, but it happens in sports. But he was inches away from hitting the ground, just rolled off the Navy defender and took it for it was 60-plus yard touchdown. I know that for sure. But you won't see that most of the time in college or NFL, depending on the player and who it is. Nebraska and UCLA was a very interesting game, mainly because Nebraska won at 28-21, but you didn't have Dylan Raiola this week. You had your freshman quarterback in, I forget his last name, so I'm not going to butcher it, but he spent most of the game as well. He didn't have an incompletion until fourth quarter. He was 8 of 8, he was like 9 of 9 or 10 for 10, and he finally has incompletion in the fourth quarter. He had over 100-plus passing yards, and then he had a couple incompletions in the fourth quarter, but he had 0 incomplete passes for a long time, which is rarely unseen in college, especially against decent teams, even like UCLA. They kind of jump-started their season back after firing coaches, defensive coordinator, and offensive coordinator. So it's very interesting to see that happen. And as I said just a couple minutes ago, was the ACC is in a little bit of trouble. They are. If you look at how their season had gone, you had the potential of Miami was the front runner to win the ACC, even potentially the national championship. They fell off the past 4 weeks. They are a team that's possibly not going to make the ACC championship. And as of right now, if Georgia Tech wins out the rest of the year, even if they lose to they play Georgia, it's always a non-conference game at the end of the year because of the rivalry there. Even if they lose that, they'll still be in the ACC championship, but they might not make the college football playoffs because 2 losses. I know Notre Dame has 2 losses, but they're an independent school. They're a team that right now is in the chances to make college football playoffs, but it's just going to be interesting to see how it goes for that conference because they're in a little bit of trouble. If they can't get something going up, there could be no ACC school in the college football playoffs, which would be bad for the ACC because you had the potential of Clemson being there. You had Miami. Yeah, I don't think Georgia Tech was up there, but Louisville was out there at one point. You're going to be down to possibly one school there because Virginia was in it, and so was Louisville with their them making the the higher up in the top 25. Now you're looking at both those schools being out. So now you think, okay, how do we figure out which ACC school, even if they win, are they in there? And probably not with the new rules because now the new rules are like the top 4. Last year, it was like top 4 championship teams of their division when got 1 through 4. Now this year it's now the top. Even if you win their championship or lose it, you still could be in it even with one loss. Might you might still be a top 4 team depending on your ranking, or you might be outside of it. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how that goes. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, IU's comeback win in the final seconds was very much a statement win for IU. You know, they had been leading it up until about a couple minutes left in the fourth, where Penn State drove down, scored 7, and made it 24-20. At one point, they shouldn't have had a touchdown even if the ref wasn't in the way of one of the IU defenders. There was a chance they tackle him. They might have gone down and scored, but it was like a 60-yard run and then a touchdown, and then IU had to like respond back after that one. I believe it was that one that made it 24-17 was after that 60-yard run by I want to say it was Katron Allen. It was not Singleton. It was Katron. Was it? I don't remember. It's hard to remember which Penn State running back is because one wears 10 and one wears 13. I believe Singleton is 10. Yeah, Singleton's 10. Allen is 13, or it's the other way around. I always forget. They're both decent running backs. Don't get me wrong, but just trying to remember which one is who, it's kind of hard if you don't study and remember who the players are. But both of them are pretty decent running backs. But it was very interesting to see that he took it that long and scored, and then IU's touchdown to come back to win it in the final few seconds of the game. As I said earlier, to Oregon versus Iowa, Oregon had some very much hardships during that game. The main problem was the game was raining. It was wet out there. It was hard to keep a hold of the ball. A lot of players were slipping and all that. If Iowa could have got that 2-point conversion, that game would have gone to overtime. If even that, I don't know how the game would have gone. You know, it would have just been very interesting, but Iowa still winning it is very good for them. It helps keep their case for potentially making the college football playoffs. So we'll see how that goes. Excuse me. And now let's talk about the NFL. The NFL started off this week with, I would say, a pretty bad Thursday night football game between the Broncos and Raiders. The Broncos won 10-7. Bo Nix has not looked, I would say, his best this year, but the Raiders did not look good all year. It's been hard to really determine if the Broncos will be, if they make the playoffs, a team that you will be like, yeah, they're going to win a playoff game. It's not looked like that for them. They've looked like most of their wins have come off beating these trash teams by a score. And it's not looked good for them. It's not been really good for them. So it's going to be kind of hard to defend the Broncos later down the line if they make the playoffs, because their biggest wins are versus trash teams by barely any points. I mean, don't get me wrong, their comeback win versus the Giants was good, but still a bad team when they played them, and still are kind of a bad team. So it was kind of hard. It's kind of hard to say, like, yeah, the Broncos are a really good playoff team if they make the playoffs. I don't think they will be a good team in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go. Now, Sunday morning, that game did not disappoint. It was a really good game to watch between the Colts and the Falcons in Germany. You know, I will say this. Germany games have been pretty good the past few years, depending on who's playing in them. So it's been very good to watch them. The Colts have been a really good team this year. It was really good to watch the Colts win that game. The Colts won it in overtime, 31-25. They were down a little bit at one point during the game, but they pretty much won that game with the help of Jonathan Taylor's rush for 244 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. He had currently has the longest rushing touchdown and rush in the NFL for a running back. He had an 83 rushing yard touchdown that helped him be the new rushing leader touchdown leader for the Indianapolis Colts. He passed Edgerrin James to make it 65, and then had another one to make it 66. The last one came in overtime to make him have 66 touchdowns right now as the current rushing leader for the Colts. Outside of Taylor's performance, the Colts looked kind of rusty on offense. Jones, I don't know. He looked good. He looked bad. He looked in between. It just, the past 2 weeks have kind of brought out, in my opinion, the old giant self of him. I'm not saying it's all been like the O-line's fault. Last week there were some O-line problems, but this week it just looked like there was times where he could have just thrown the ball away or even thrown it real fast. He's just holding on to the ball a little bit too long. He had back-to-back fumbles on one drive. He recovered one, and then the next one was lost to the Falcons, or the Falcons went down and scored. He's had a couple problems with holding on to the ball these past few weeks. That's hopefully something the Colts can fix and make better. Last week, the Colts as well, they got Sauce Gardner to help that defense. Defense outside the corners, they looked pretty good. It's just going to be interesting to see how the Colts continue to win these games. The Falcons looked good. Penix was very calm and poised after their opening drive fumble after the Colts turn it over on fourth down. After that, they stalled out a little. Both teams stalled out a little, but the Falcons still have a decent team. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but they're still a decent team to watch and see how they go. Now, the noon games that happened were very interesting. I did not have the Dolphins beating the Bills this week. That was very interesting that happened. Dolphins won, 30-13. Allen didn't look too good. Their whole team didn't really look good. Maybe they'll be able to bounce back next week when they play. It's just going to be interesting to see how that goes, because the Bills shouldn't have lost that game. You go from last week. You go from beating the Chiefs to losing to the Dolphins. That's not what you want to see happen, especially when you were at home last week and then you went away to play the Dolphins in Miami and expect to beat Miami because Miami's not looked that good, but Tua looked pretty good out there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. The Bears, they beat the Giants 24-20. Dart got a concussion that game. If Dart didn't get a concussion, I think the Giants win that game. And after they lost, the Giants fired their head coach, Brian Daboll. Daboll is no longer the head coach of the Giants. It will be interesting to see who the Giants chooses as their next head coach. That means there has been, 2 firings as head coach. The Titans fired their head coach, and now the Giants fire there. It's been interesting to see that Mike McDaniels has kept his head coaching job for as long as he's had it. So, yeah, the firing of Daboll was expected, but I would have thought that would happen earlier. There's rumors that he got fired, back when they played Denver, and they, I guess, decided to keep level heads and say, no, we're good. We'll keep him for however long. And finally, after the breaking point, they said, yeah, Daboll, you're fired. You're gone. We're going to choose someone else to be the head coach next year. So Daboll could be a head coach somewhere else. Not sure where he's going to get the next head coaching job, but he'll be a coach somewhere else. The Patriots continue to be really good this year. They beat the Bucs 28-23. A lot of their rookies had touchdowns in this game. I think most of their touchdowns, too, came from about 50-yard plus, besides one touchdown. So, I mean, it looked really good for the Patriots, and hopefully the Patriots can continue to be as good as they are this year. Drake May has looked phenomenal, so it will be interesting to see how they continue to play. The Ravens beat the Vikings 27-19. Lamar has looked really good coming off of injury the past few weeks. He's won games. He's continued to improve. So hopefully the Ravens can do something and maybe make the playoffs, maybe make it come back to be in the playoffs, hopefully. Vikings. If you can figure some things out with JJ McCarthy, I think they'll be good. I mean, last week McCarthy comes back, wins against the Lions. This week loses to the Ravens. It's football. You're going to be winning one week to maybe losing the next, or you're going to win and be undefeated the whole season. So it's just going to be interesting to see how that goes. The Jets get back-to-back wins. They beat the Browns this week 27-20. Last week they won. I don't even think Fields got over 100 passing yards. He had like 7 at one point, and they went up. So, yeah, I don't know how the Jets are going to do the rest of the year. I think they should be pretty much out of playoff contention. They're probably not going to make it, but, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I think Stefanski will get fired, the Browns head coach. I think he will be fired soon, mainly because he's pushing still the fact that Dylan Gabriel is going to be the starting quarterback, which, don't get me wrong, he's looked all right, but I feel like at one point you got to be like, yeah, we might have a quarterback competition here soon, see if you might give Shedeur Sanders a shot, but I don't think he will. I don't think he will unless he feels like, yeah, maybe I'll give him a shot, but it's never going to happen. I just don't feel like he wants Sanders to start. I think he wants to push that Dylan Gabriel is going to be a starting quarterback no matter what, which I don't blame him for wanting to do that, but at one point he's got to either the ownership has to decide, yeah, you're fired. The interim head coach is going to be like, yeah, we'll have a quarterback competition just to see who we think will be the better quarterback, which I think they should have done that to feel like who will be the quarterback too. Even like during preseason, after Shedeur could have played preseason a lot more in preseason game 3, they went with Gabriel for a longer time. And this season, mainly, Gabriel has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. This week was his first week having multiple touchdown passes. It's not looked good for him. I get he's a short quarterback. Like, you look at Bryce Young and Kyler Murray, he's short, but he's not that accurate. And there's many times where, or in one game this year where he threw for over 52 times and had 23 incompletions. There comes a point where you had to decide as the head coach, like, do we really think he's that good and should be our starter, or should we just have a little quarterback competition just to be like, yeah, let's see how he'll do. And I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, they literally benched Flacco after having one bad game for the Browns, but Gabriel has had, I would say, consistently bad games. He hasn't really won them a game. I know they won one game with him, but that was mainly because Quinyon Judkins had like a crazy rushing game, and Gabriel had a trash passing game. He had an interception, I believe, that game too. So I don't think you can defend Gabriel as the starting quarterback for much longer for the Browns, but it will be interesting to see if maybe in a couple weeks, finally, if Stefanski is fired or the organization or decides like, yeah, it's time to have a quarterback competition just to see how things go. So we'll see how they continue to play. The Texans came back to beat the Jags, actually. No CJ Stroud this week. Davis Mills was starting quarterback. They were down 29 to, I believe, it was like 16 at one point. Yeah, I think it was like 29-16, something like that. And they pretty much came back to the fourth quarter, put up a good amount of points, and beat the Jags 36-29. I mean, I thought, okay, the Jags are going to win. That's going to be the Jags. And then you come back to it and you hear later on like, oh, yeah, the Jags got beat by the Texans. So you're saying the Texans without CJ Stroud came back and actually won versus the Jags versus the Texans with CJ Stroud. They've not really had, I would say, a good win versus good team this year. CJ Stroud has not looked good as well this year, and I think the Texans might have questions about him when it comes to contract talks, either this year or next year, on whether or not you want to keep CJ. I mean, he looked good his rookie year. Don't get me wrong. He looked good, but the past few years, he has not looked like the same guy his rookie year. I've always had questions about the CJ Stroud pick for Texans. Exact same thing with the Colts taking Anthony Richardson. There's been questions there, so it's going to be hard to determine whether or not the Texans feel comfortable with sticking with Stroud, or in a year or two, are they going to go, all right, we're going to draft a rookie quarterback, and if you don't beat him out, or if he plays better, if you don't start playing well, that rookie's going to be a starting quarterback. And if he plays better than you, you're gone. And that could happen either this year, probably not this year. It'll probably be you let him play out his rookie contract before you decide, yeah, we're going to give you a contract extension. And I know for D'Amico Ryans, he's got to be thinking the exact same thing too. Like, do we continue to roll with CJ, or do we determine whether or not we want to have another rookie quarterback come in and possibly compete with him for the starting quarterback job? Which I think is going to happen in either probably not this year's draft, probably in the 2027 draft. We will see a potential quarterback drafted by the Texans to determine whether or not he's going to be the starter, or you're going to have quarterback competition there to determine whether or not CJ keeps his job or loses it in maybe 2 years. I don't know if that will happen, but there's a big chance that could happen because, like I said, CJ Stroud has not looked good this year, and if he continues to not look good next year too, there's a big chance that CJ could no longer be the starting quarterback for the Texans. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Now, the 4 o'clock games, I would say they were all right. Most of them were blowouts. All the teams won by pretty much 40-plus points. I mean, it was not good. I think I forgot to mention the Panthers and Saints game. Saints won that game. That was their second or third win this year. No, it was their second win. So yeah, it was very interesting there that they won. The Cardinals lost to the Seahawks 44-22. The Rams beat the Niners 42-26. The Lions beat the Commanders 44-22. Now, it is very interesting to see that two teams won 44-22 this week. Both the Lions and the Seahawks winning 40 by 22 points. One of the funniest things that happened during the Lions Commanders game is the current sitting president, Donald Trump, was there in attendance at the game to swear in new military service members. They were all sworn in during halftime. About 200, I think, members were sworn into military at halftime. So it was very cool to see that. But even then, the President Trump got into the announcer's box and announced a driver two for both the Lions and Commanders. And when he was in the box, the Commanders scored to cut the deficit. I believe it was like 32 to. It was like 30 something or 26 to 16, something like that. I forget what the score was, but yeah, they scored and got a touchdown. And President Trump was very impressed with it. He mentioned some very interesting things as well about another previous president who, before he was president, he was announcing Iowa Hawkeye football games back in the day. President Reagan used to call football games, which I thought that was very cool, that he honored and recognized some former presidents and other people who have been there in what he's done as president. So it's very cool and very interesting to see him do that. Maybe one day after President Trump's over, maybe he gets into announcing football games. I don't think he will, but it's very cool to see him in there and talk a little bit of stuff about football. Now, these other two games, though, Seahawks beating the Cardinals 44-22, and then the Rams beating the Niners 42-26. The Seahawks have looked really good this year. They're a team that I think could make the Super Bowl, depending on how they play the rest of the year. They'll either be playing really good or they'll be playing really bad, but most of the past few games, they have been up big at half. And I mean big. They just have destroyed every single team they've played the past few weeks. So it will be interesting to see how they go. The Rams have looked phenomenal. Excuse me. Stafford looks like a quarterback who could be in the MVP conversation this year, and he might be in the MVP conversation, as well as, I think, mainly as a Colts fan too. I think currently right now, I would say Jonathan Taylor is in that MVP conversation. If he continues to do what he does, he will continue to be in that MVP conversation. Will he win it? That will depend on who the NFL thinks is the better choice there. Like I said, Stafford's up there. He's put up really good numbers this year. He's starting to, I would say, be in a MVP caliber type player this year. But I just don't know if they'll give it to him or who they will give it to. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Now let's talk some Sunday Night Football. It was a really interesting game to watch. The Chargers won it though. They beat the Steelers 25-10. But at the beginning of the game, it was not good for either side. It started out being 3-2. The Chargers were safety. Steelers got a safety on the Chargers, making it. Oh no, the Chargers got the safety, making it 0-2. And then the Steelers went down and made it 3-2. And then probably wasn't until a little bit towards the end of the first quarter, maybe started the second, where the Chargers scored, and then the Chargers pretty much ran away with that game in the second half and won it, like I said, 25-10. It was pretty much one-sided that whole game, so it would be very interesting to see how the Chargers go for it. And Steelers last week, they had 6 turnovers on the Colts. They made the Colts turn over 6 times. So going from that to losing to the Chargers on Sunday Night Football, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see how both teams continue to play the rest of the year. There's still a lot of football left to play in the NFL, so we'll see how that goes. Now, Monday Night Football is going to be between the Eagles and Packers. This game I have as a toss-up, mainly because I don't know who will win this game for Monday Night Football this week. I feel like the Eagles can win, but as well as I feel like the Packers can win it too. It's just going to depend on, does the Packers defense step up this week and play like they did versus Sunday Night Football versus the Steelers? Or do you see Jalen Hurts finally, I would say, have a breakout game this year? Because he really hasn't had, I would say, a breakout game being the quarterback. I mean, yes, they've won games and done stuff, but he's not been putting up the numbers that we saw last year as the quarterback. Because last year they relied heavily on Saquon, but even when Saquon was doing really well, like Jalen still put up really, really good numbers. It's just going to depend on, do the Packers defense play well and their offense play well, or does the Eagles offense and defense decide to be how they've been during some of the games this year and just wipe a team out and not let them get back into the game? Or are we going to get a wishy-washy game between them where the Eagles and Packers decide to both not really play well? Or it's either going to be one team decides to play well or one doesn't, because both teams have been, I would say, you got the Packers being good one week to being the Packers really bad next week. And last week, like, the Packers were not good. They lost to the Panthers last week. So do the Packers decide to play really well this week? Or does the Eagles decide to play really well? Or do they decide to play very poorly? Because both teams have been like that sometimes this year. Maybe they go a couple weeks winning, and they're like, yeah, we don't really want to play that well this week. And it's just going to depend on who wants to play the better game this week. So, yeah. So let's now get into my picks for this weekend for college football and NFL. That'll happen over the weekend. Friday, November 14th, there will be one of them will be a pretty good game. Clemson, Louisville. That game's gonna be at Louisville. Clemson, they've kind of bounced back, but they still got to win out the rest. I would say they have to win still a couple more weeks to be bowl eligible. Even if they barely make a bowl game, they're not going to be that great of a team to be in the bowl game. So I would give Louisville the win here, but I mean, Clemson could win that game. It's just going to be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, the other game there is Minnesota, Oregon. Oregon should win it pretty easily, but you never know. Minnesota, like, they've randomly just beaten a team like Nebraska a couple weeks ago, where Nebraska should have beat the crap out of them, but Minnesota won it. So I don't know which one you're going to get for both those teams, so we'll see how that goes. All right, Saturday, November 15th. There's a couple interesting games at noon. Wisconsin plays IU. I feel like IU will win that game pretty good. Wisconsin's offense has been, I would say, very mediocre. Like I said, they barely beat Washington last week with none of the quarterbacks, even punter, throwing over 100 yards. They relied heavily on the ground, so should be interesting to see how that goes. South Carolina plays Texas A&M. Texas A&M has been a very dominant team. Give me Texas A&M to win that game, probably by like 30 plus points. I don't see South Carolina sticking with them. If that game was at South Carolina, I would say yes, but it's at A&M, so give me Texas A&M to win that game by like 30 plus. Now, this game is going to be interesting. You got Notre Dame and Pitt playing each other. Both teams, as of right now, they're still considered in the top 25, but I feel like Notre Dame's going to win that game. I don't think Pitt has the team to beat Notre Dame, so give me Notre Dame beating Pitt. Let's see what else we got here. I mean, at 12:45, you'll have Arkansas and LSU. Like I said earlier, LSU has had some problems, but Arkansas has not been that great of a team after firing their head coach, and same with LSU. They haven't been that really great of a team after firing both head coaches. So, honestly, if I had to choose who to win here, I would give it to LSU, but I don't know. Even at that game, their lowest ticket price is literally $13. Are you kidding me? The cheapest ticket there is $13. That's I don't think I've seen an SEC school ticket be that low before. Even if they're playing an SEC opponent, it's $13. That's crazy. I have nothing to say to that. So I'm not gonna add anything else. Then that's just insane how cheap that ticket is and how bad both teams are this year. So yeah, we'll continue on after that. I mean, 1 o'clock, you got West Virginia and Arizona State playing. West Virginia has looked pretty good this year, so has Arizona State, depending on who Arizona State's quarterback's been. When Leavitt has been playing, they've been well. Even with backup quarterback Sims, he's played well, so should be interesting to see who wins that game. If I had to go who wins that game, give me Arizona State. I think Arizona State wins that game, and that should be an interesting game to see. Now we get to the 3 o'clock hour, pretty much, of games that will happen. Oklahoma and Bama play each other. Bama should win that game easily. Oklahoma, they've not looked well this year, even with Mateer back. You don't know how they're going to play. Either Oklahoma's going to be, yeah, we're going to play up here, or they're going to just twinkle down and be like, yeah, we're going to play middle, or we're going to play kind of bad, but then go back up to here. So there's going to be kind of a very interesting game that day. UCF and Texas Tech play each other. Texas Tech, they've been all right. It's just, I don't know if Texas Tech will lose this game because UCF's not been that really great of school, but it will just depend on how Texas Tech wants to play. They've either been really good or randomly just, when their one loss, they just decided to play real bad. They had back quarterback in too, so I just don't know how that game will go for sure. Virginia plays Duke. Like I said, Virginia just lost to Wake Forest, which Wake Forest has not been great this year. So maybe Duke beats Virginia. Maybe, I don't know. Oh, it'll be interesting to see how that game goes for sure. So yeah, that'll be an interesting game to watch. Miami and North Carolina State, that might be a good game to watch because Miami, like I said, has not played well this year. North Carolina State, they beat Georgia Tech last 2 weeks. Yeah, it was last week? Yeah, last week they beat Georgia Tech in overtime. No, just regular time. I mean, at home. They beat Georgia Tech at North Carolina State. I know North Carolina State's going to be at Miami, but should be interesting to see. Maybe North Carolina State goes into Miami and beats Miami. Maybe that happens. We'll see. Iowa plays USC at USC. USC, they've had this great defense and offense this year, but Iowa has been known for their defense, and their defense has looked pretty well this year. And they're going to be at USC, so, I don't think Iowa's going to go into USC and win, but, stranger things have happened. Heck, Iowa almost beat Oregon at home this week, so maybe Iowa goes to USC, maybe they win there, maybe they don't. It's just going to be interesting to see how that game goes. Yes, now let's get into the 7 o'clock hour games. Should be, maybe there will be an interesting matchup here. Florida plays Ole Miss. Ole Miss should win it, but, who knows how Florida will play this week. They almost beat Georgia a couple weeks ago. They should beat Georgia a couple weeks ago. Oh, so I don't know. Maybe Ole Miss wins it really big, or maybe it's a close win for Ole Miss, or maybe Florida upsets. They will be at Ole Miss, so if they upset there, it will be interesting. But I don't know if they will or not, so we'll see how that game goes. I think this game might be interesting because Wisconsin just beat Washington. Purdue plays Washington. I know Purdue's not home, but maybe, just maybe, they might get an upset. I don't think it will happen, though, but it might happen. It's not possible it will, but it could happen. Not saying it will, though. UCLA plays Ohio State at Ohio State. Now, don't get me wrong. UCLA beating Penn State a couple weeks ago was very interesting. UCLA's wins after that were very interesting. Do I think they upset Ohio State, though? No, I honestly don't think so. I mean, they couldn't upset IU, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, UCLA, they're going to go into IU, they're going to upset them. I don't think that's going to happen when they play Ohio State unless UCLA decides to flip a script or something. Maybe they do, but I don't see that happening. This will probably be the best game of the night, though. Texas, Georgia. Texas is going to be at Georgia. I see Georgia winning it, but, Texas randomly after Arch had a concussion 2 weeks ago, came back the next week and played like one of his uncles. We might see a different Arch Manning be out there versus Georgia, but I don't think that's going to happen. But if it does, hooray for him. But I see Georgia winning it. It might be a close game or it might be a blowout win for Georgia. So it's going to be a very interesting game. And that's probably the best game to watch Saturday night. So, yeah. Now let's get into the NFL week 11. The Thursday night football matchup between the Jets and Patriots. Yeah, give me the Patriots to win that game. I don't see the Jets winning that game. If they win it, it's by sheer dumb luck. Like they have the past 2 weeks, they've won by sheer dumb luck. They might win, they might lose, who knows, but I don't see that happening. Now we get to Sunday's game. The early morning game, this will be a very interesting game to watch. It's going to be in Spain between the Commanders and Dolphins. Give me the Dolphins to win this game. I know they beat the Bills, but Commanders I would say they've not looked good with or without Jane Daniels. Even with Daniels, they've looked good, but they haven't played well. And Marcus Mariota is starting this week again until Daniels is better from the dislocated elbow. They got good news over the weekend that no torn ligaments. He should be good to go. So it will be very interesting. He should be able to come back. I'm not saying he's good to go this week, but he might be good to go in maybe 2 to 3 weeks after they play this week for Dolphins. He might be able to come back and play in 2 to 3 weeks, but at least it might be 4, depending if they decide to put him on IR this week, which I don't know if they will. They might not. They just got good news on him. That's all I know. Panthers will play the Dolphins. Not the Dolphins. The Panthers will play the Falcons. They're going to be in Atlanta. Last time they played, Atlanta did not have Penix starting. They had Kirk starting. So give me the Falcons to win at home versus when they played at Carolina a couple weeks ago. So give me the Falcons to win. Now this game's going to be interesting. This should probably be the best game to watch at 1 o'clock is the Bucs and the Bills. Now, yes, the Buccaneers just lost to the Patriots, but Tampa could upset Buffalo. Now Tampa's been a really good team this year. Outside of their couple losses, they've kind of been close games, but not so close games. But it's just depending on how they played. I think Tampa goes into Buffalo and upsets Buffalo at 1:00. That game, honestly, should have been a later game than what it is. But I don't make the rules on how scheduling goes, so should be interesting to see how that game goes. Houston plays Tennessee. Stroud should be back, so Houston should win that game no matter what, unless the Titans decide to actually play, which I don't know if they will or not, so we'll see how that game goes. The Bears and Vikings play. They haven't played since Monday Night Football started their regular season this year, and the last time they played, J.J. McCarthy went to Chicago and upset the Bears at home. I wouldn't be surprised, they're at home. The Vikings are at home. Give me the Vikings to win at home. I think J.J. McCarthy gets it done. We'll see how that goes. The Packers play the Giants. Give me the Packers for that one. After firing Dabble and the team not looking good, if and only if Dart's not starting and they start Russell Wilson, yeah, the Packers will win that game by a long shot. The Bengals play the Steelers this week as well. Give me the Steelers to win. Burrow is supposed to return to practice this week. If he clears by having full participation all this week, he should be there to play for Steelers, but I don't think they'll have him go this week. I think they'll go with Flacco again this week and just see how it goes. So it should be interesting to see how that goes. The Chargers play the Jags. Give me the Chargers to beat the Jags. After letting Davis Mills come back and beat you, I would choose the Chargers over Jags any day of the week. Seattle plays the Rams at 4:00. Give me the Rams. I really do like how Stafford is playing right now. Darnold's not. Don't get me wrong. Darnold is playing really good right now, but I think I like how Stafford is just controlling the game right now and how they're playing. They are playing very elite ball on offense. Defense is doing their jobs. Give me the Rams to win that game. I 100% believe the Rams. Not 100%. I'll say more like 65% and feel like the Rams will win that game. And they're at home too, so big advantage there. The 49ers play the Cardinals. Give me the 49ers to beat the Cardinals. Even if Kyler was starting, I would still choose the Niners over them. The Cardinals defense they've looked good, but their offense has looked very bad. So I'm going to choose the Niners over the Cardinals. This game's a 4:25 game, and I don't like it being that. It's Baltimore versus Cleveland. Give me Baltimore to win that game. Dylan Gabriel's going to look so bad. The last time they played, the Ravens beat the living snot out of them. It was like 45 to 25, something like that. Like Lamar had a phenomenal game. Give me the Ravens to beat the Browns by I would say by 40 plus. I think they are going to beat them that badly. And you even as bad as the Browns are, the lowest ticket there, and it's at Cleveland, is $13. That's just sad when the cheapest ticket for a team that sucks so badly is $13. I mean, if a couple years, I think last year, the Panthers, their cheapest ticket was even $6. It was below $10. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that teams that are bad this late into the year, you're just selling tickets for $13 and you can go to it. Does not surprise me whatsoever. Now you got the Chiefs and Broncos at 4:25 as well. Give me the Chiefs. Like I said, Denver has their wins have been either really minimal. They've not really had a game where they've won by 20 plus points besides, I think, maybe one game. Outside of that, every game that they've won has been versus trash teams, and they've been very close. Give me the Chiefs to beat the Broncos, probably by, I will say, maybe 10 points. That's probably about it. Then you got Lions and Eagles, Sunday Night Football. Honestly, they're going to be at Philly. I feel like, but I'm going to say this and probably they will win. I feel like the Lions will win, but I feel like even with Philly at home, they'll probably win. The Lions, you don't know which week you're going to have the Lions. The Lions were really good for so many weeks, and then they lost.
really good for a couple weeks, then lost. So it's going to depend on how the Lions would decide to play this week. And the final thing was this Monday Night Football matchup. It's going to be probably one-sided, but it could be trash as well. Is between the Cowboys and the Raiders. I don't even know who's going to win that game. I'll look into it probably more next week, but yeah, that's all I have for college football and NFL this week. So we'll end this on a prayer, and I will let you all go. So thank you, Jesus, for this day. Lord, thank you for allowing me to do this. Allow this to continue as long as I want it to. We'd like to thank our veterans and everything, Lord, too, and hopefully they have a great week in the remembrance of all of them. And that will be it, Lord, and thank you in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.